why do we see massive amounts of turnover? And why do we see, lower amounts of retention? I think if you were to survey, and I wish I had stats on this, but I genuinely believe that a lot of people that are leaving some of these companies, they don't feel valued. They just feel like a number. They just feel like another person on, the factory line of, if I leave, who cares? I'll just replace you. And I'm treated as such, and they don't feel valued. And I think that when you really take people's opinions that are doing the work, their boots on the ground, and you open it up for their perspectives, it shows that you value them. And we are live for another episode of the Blueprint Podcast with your host. I'm Zach Iyer.
And I'm Spencer Maxwell. And Zachary, what are we talking about today?
Today, we want to talk a little bit about leadership.
I love this topic.
Yeah, I think that it is extremely important in the entrepreneur space, in the business space. And for us, Spencer and I, we're more so at the beginning journey of leadership and building and what that looks like. So first and foremost, we just kind of want to talk about leadership and characteristics of leaders that we've experienced in our life, and kind of taking that as the model and either replicating that or deciding not to, use some of those characteristics.
When shopping a la carte. Yeah, I think pulling from your favorite leaders. A la carte style.
Exactly. And how we can use previous experience under leadership and how we're going to apply that now in the beginning stages of our lives and our businesses and our leadership journey. So I know straight off the rip, Spencer, you've had an extremely impactful leader that has kind of set you on the trajectory that you're on.
Yeah. When I think of leadership and leaders who have influenced me, the first one that sticks out to me is my old boss, Michelle Williams. She was like the pivotal point to just my whole mindset. Like, I firmly believe I wouldn't be successful if it weren't for her leadership influence on me.
Really? That is a bold statement.
Yeah. Well, and it's because it was a bold move that she made, honestly. So it's like, I've told you guys about my time at Moraine Country Club when I was managing over there, and I didn't get to that management position because of me. It was strictly because of Michelle. When she was leading me, I was I started out as a back server and became a server. And I didn't think, I was just there because like, hey, the pay was good. I didn't know what would later come from it, but Michelle saw something in me and she put me in a place, one, which I think was really important to succeed, but also she let me fail. And I think that was huge. And that's like, she let me fail and she let me figure things out a lot on my own. But she was always there to pick me up if I did fail. She gave me a lot of good skills, taught me just a lot, put me around a lot of successful people, trusted me with very, very heavy, like weighty tasks. She saw a lot of great things in me that I never thought I possessed. And she put me in a leadership position, and she gave me just the proper resources to succeed, which ultimately has, she put me in a room that really shifted my mindset from like, hey, I want to be average. I was cool with being average in life to like, hey, now I've seen success. And I built my confidence up there, and now it's taken me to where I'm at today as far as my mindset. So but the number one thing I think is that she let me fail. She would let me fail, but she would be there to, all right, now let's walk through that.
So kind of like the parenting things that we're talking about, right? Of like, we want our kids to experience hardships,
Yeah.
and a little bit of failure and a little bit of, uncertainty and trying to figure it out. Because what does that do? Our favorite word, it builds grit,
Yes.
right? But at the same time, we're not going to let you fall too far. We're kind of the safety net, right?
She picked me up and then we would reflect.
Yes. Which I that's so commendable. So, I mean, and you don't have to get into this if you don't want to, but like, how did she let you fail? Like, what were things that, you were not performing on that she let you kind of do?
She gave me a lot of freedom on things that were unknown. Like, she put me in leadership situations to where she would let me figure things out myself, where I would figure things out through trial and error. But ultimately, she was waiting there on the other side to, hey, why'd you make that decision? Let's walk through that together. And that was really helpful because I'm a trial and error kind of guy. I'm like, throw me in the deep end.
Well, I mean, I think that's also kind of a little bit what we do when we brainstorm about the podcast, about business, all this kind of stuff. Is what do? We just throw ideas out there, see what sticks, brainstorm out, and then based on the different ideas, this didn't work out too well. Let's modify type thing.
Yeah. And the biggest thing for her too is she got to know as she's putting me in this leadership role, she's leading me professionally, but also she cares about me personally and she's getting to know me personally. And she was very tough. I was very scared of her at times.
Yeah.
Right. When she put that face on, it was like, oh, uh-oh. Yeah. But also very tender at times. And that's one of our leadership qualities that we have here. And it's like, we just talked about like parenting styles. My favorite pastor, Mark Driscoll, he says, you need to be tough, but you need to be tender. And if you're one more than the other, you're not a good father.
And man, that is so good. And I feel like that is one of the toughest things, because I feel like at times, people in leadership positions and us as leaders, we have proclivities towards one thing or another, right? We're either
100%. I lean more towards
soft, or we're too much of a hard nose.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm too hard nosed.
Yeah, I am too.
I got to develop more of a tender side.
I'm very much that way as well.
Steph has helped shift that for me. But
and Tawny's that way for me is as well. I'm very cutthroat. I'm very let's go, which, that is not always a good characteristic. No. I mean, there are situations where that is necessary, but there's a lot of situations where that will do the opposite effect. That will be more destructive than constructive.
Yes. And I think so the tough and the tender, that is very prevalent. And one of the things that I know you're very passionate about as far as what comes to leadership, when you manage people, and I would say this is the hardest part about leadership, is catering to different styles of learning.
Yeah, I think that is one of the biggest things that I've picked up from leaders in the past, good or bad. And one thing before I get into that ties in with this and the tough and tender, I think one of the biggest things is, as a leader, you have to have complete control of your emotions, and you have to be in check with you before you can do this, because the tough and tender thing, that is a difficult thing to balance. And if you don't have your emotions completely controlled, you're not going to be able to do those things.
Well, Steph always says it. She always says, it's not feeling, it's knowing. So you have to, rather than feeling it, you have to translate that feeling into knowing. So knowing, when do I implement the tough? When do I implement the tender?
Yep.
So, but that is an emotional maturity thing, which comes only through trial and error.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's a lot of error.
Absolutely.
But that tough and tender translates to, hey, I have to know these different learning styles.
And I think that is so huge, of something that I have observed, and something that I'm really going to try to implement on my end when it's our time, when we're hiring, when we're, we have DNA and having a bunch of really successful guys. That's one thing that I feel so strongly about, because I've come to realize that. I think one of the ways that I've come to realize that is through marriage, where, like we were saying, like I'm a very cutthroat, hard nosed type person. Tawny's not that way.
Yeah.
Tawny does not respond well if, you start yelling at her, right? There are different personality types, and people are motivated and people respond differently. And we have to understand that to get the best usage out of the best usage. I don't want to say usage because that sounds like a bad term, but get all the potential out of the people that are under you. Is you have to relate to them and treat them and motivate them in a way that responds well and connects well with their personality type.
And it's much easier said than done.
Much easier
100%,
said than done.
Because that I think that leads to another leadership quality. Sorry, we're banging these out, but they just keep tying together.
Yeah.
Of being intentional with people and relationships. Because once you get to know the person personally, but not too personally, keeping it professional, and once you're intentional about learning about them, that will ultimately, give you the determination of like, hey, this is how this is more their learning style.
Yeah.
So like another good quality of a leader, I believe, is intentionality. Being able to sit with that person, learn about that person so you can best, because ultimately I think leadership is being a servant.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people get it twisted. I think leader, an old way of leadership was like, hey, you need to serve me. I very much think that to be a leader, especially nowadays, is you need to learn how to serve others.
Business owners, do you know the value of creating a strong brand and realize social media is one of the best ways to do it, but don't have the time to stay consistent or know where to start? Do you need a modern website or an eye-catching logo? You only get one first impression, and you've got to make it count. No matter if you're looking for a website, a logo package, or if you need a professional to craft and implement a custom social media strategy to create a recognizable brand and drive sales, the Z&T agency has got you covered. Odds are you've probably been thinking about these things to some degree, but didn't know a solution. Or maybe this is all new to you and you're interested in hearing more. Either way, we'd love to talk to you. Reach out to zach.hire@theztagency.com to book your consultation call today.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think that there are seasons where you need to be in the trenches with them.
Yes.
And arm by arm, working, because what does that do for them? That builds a level of respect.
I was going to say respect, yeah.
And trust in the leader to know that he or she wants what's best for me. They're willing to do the dirty work with me. They're in the trenches. We're working together. It's more of a team approach versus a hierarchy approach.
Yes, people won't work for somebody who won't do the work themselves.
100%.
I totally Michael
agree.
Jordan, a lot of people give him bad raps because of, that documentary came out. But he's like, I would never ask my teammates to do something that I wouldn't do. He's like, I was just pushing them as hard as I can, and I would do all the things that I asked them to do. And so I think, yes, that builds respect by being in the trenches with them.
It does. And it kind of negates the old saying of, do as I say, not what I do. But if your actions reflect that you are, doing what you're saying, like, I feel like a lot of times people from a psychological perspective kind of put up walls, or they don't want to go to war for somebody. If they're like, oh, they're just, sitting on their horse, a mile back while we're on the front lines. You know what I mean? They're not willing to put in the effort. They're not willing to go the extra mile because they think that you're just, above them.
And back to like the whole, my favorite leader, Michelle, who I keep referencing to, that was one of her great qualities, was like, all right, we're in this was in the service industry, and it's like, okay, we're short staffed. She's carrying trays. I watched her wash dishes before back there with the dishwasher.
And let me ask you, what did that do for you in your view of her?
Oh my gosh. If anything, I would put somebody on a bigger pedestal that did that than if they just sat in their office talking about the paperwork that they need to push through.
100%.
Right.
Absolutely. It's building the respect.
Yeah. 100%. And so that motivated me to work harder because I saw her working so hard.
Yeah.
But we all had an understanding of like, hey, we can't let her do this because there's bigger things she has to take care of, obviously. But just that those little moments where we saw her doing that, where she humbled herself and, put herself back at the ground level, that's when ultimately I developed more respect for her, like we just discussed. And even when I was working there, I went and got to, I took a class. The old CFO of Disney was leading this class on customer service. And I took that class, and he said, even the CEO of Disney puts on a ball cap and shades and still takes out the trash.
Really?
It's in his job description.
Oh, wow.
That's why Disney is so clean. In everybody's job description, everybody has to do even those minute things.
Nobody's above the work.
Yes. And that's the culture that they've created.
Yeah.
So I think that's huge for a leader to be able to be in the trenches, because ultimately that builds respect.
Yep.
So what are some other good characteristics of a leader?
I think one thing is humility. You have to be humble.
Yeah.
Not better than.
Yeah.
And I think that ties into what you were talking about with the CFO of Disney, being willing to take out the trash. I'm not above this.
Yeah.
Right. And I think another thing in terms of humility is understanding, and I really am a huge proponent of this concept of the more that you know, the more that you find out, the more that you learn, the more that you find out that you don't know. Right. And taking the approach of, I'm always trying to get better. I'm always open-minded. I am trying to learn and grow and realize that I'm not King Tut on the top of my mountain, and I'm better than all the servants below me, all the workers below me. I think that having a level of humility is essential for building rapport with those that you manage.
Yes, I think so. From humility, I think the biggest byproduct is the rapport. And the learning, especially. For instance, like when I coached basketball, and I got to see the sideline view of everything. But every time out, I would ask basketball players or the five guys on the floor, like, "Hey, what are you seeing? How do we need to adjust? Because I'll give you my view, but now I'm asking them." And by me being humble enough, to ask that question rather than say, "Hey, I'm the coach, it's my say."
Right.
I'm asking for their input. And if they give me input and I just shut them down, I get eye rolls and icy stares.
Yep.
Rather than I'm open to that, obviously within reason or limits.
Of course.
When I'm open to that and I'm humble enough to receive that is when they have more respect for me and I get to learn what they see.
Absolutely.
Same in the workforce.
And I think another key to that is by you being open to their suggestions, it proves to them that you value them and you value their opinions.
I am now validating their opinions, which ultimately I think can also build confidence.
Absolutely.
Like, hey, coach takes my word with this much weight. My opinion matters. And it is true. I think that could build confidence for somebody as well.
And I think confidence is one. And why do we see massive amounts of turnover? And why do we see, lower amounts of retention? I think if you were to survey, and I wish I had stats on this, but I genuinely believe that a lot of people that are leaving some of these companies, they don't feel valued. They just feel like a number. They just feel like another person on, the factory line of, if I leave, who cares? I'll just replace you. And I'm treated as such, and they don't feel valued. And I think that when you really take people's opinions that are doing the work, their boots on the ground, and you open it up for their perspectives, it shows that you value them.
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the key things that people that are being managed want to feel. They want to feel that they are valued. And that's just human nature, right? We want to feel like we're of value.
Yeah. And I think if you asked me the mission statement of a leader, right? Like if you have a big company and you're hiring a leadership role, I would almost say the statement is to build an environment. Rather than to manage people, I think it is to build an environment.
Build a culture.
Build a culture.
Absolutely.
That is the job of a leader, is to build a safe and healthy environment and culture for people to thrive in.
Totally. And that's so much easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there are so many toxic environments, toxic cultures, because there's not good leadership and they're not being intentional about setting the culture. And the top 1% of businesses, I guarantee you go in there, their culture is needled.
Yeah.
When they hire, they are hiring culture fits. That's a part of like the hiring criteria of, now that I've built and established a culture, I know the importance of that. And now all new hires are going through that filter of, are they a culture fit? And not just, being nonchalant about it, but being so intentional about the culture that you build to make sure that it's that one of, excellence.
We just sat down with a CEO of a $1 billion company on Monday for lunch, and we asked them about the hiring process. And we asked, what do you look for when you are hiring people? 1, we look for grit. 2, are you a good culture fit?
Yep. And when we were asking him of what do you look for when you're hiring, it was second nature to him.
Yeah.
He just listed it off, boom, boom, boom. And I believe that there was like 6.
Yeah.
And going through, and he knew it immediately, straight off the rip. And that's because they're a $5 billion company. And you don't get to be a $5 billion company by not making sure that you are very intentional.
Well, I think they hire because of the person, not because of the role. Ultimately.
And what does that kind of tie into of what you were talking about with Michelle, of having an eye for talent and being able to understand that this person may have the experience, they may be top tier, but also in some roles of maybe this person is just a stallion. Like they are an A player. They don't have a ton of experience, but they have the skill sets that we're looking for, and being able to, I think that that's another good characteristic of a leader, is being able to recognize and develop talent.
So, and then also too, Simon Sinek.
Are you looking to buy, sell, or invest? Be sure to use a Maxwell Group at NavX Realty, where your dream is our passion. The Maxwell Group takes pride in client relationships and experiences. We utilize our knowledge, our love for the industry, and our extensive network to handle your life's biggest investment. Call or text Spencer Maxwell at 937-572-5382.
Simon Sinek, I watched this video of him, and he interviewed Navy SEALs, and there's the trust line and there's the performance line.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think trust, ultimately, we always talk about, you want to do business with people you know, like, and trust, but trust in a leader is huge, because they said that Navy SEALs would rather have more of a person they can trust than a high performer.
Yeah. I saw that.
So I would say trust is one of the most important characteristics of a leader. So you need to be trustworthy and then hire trustworthy people, which kind of ties into the high integrity piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doing the right thing.
I have a question, and I want to kind of get your perspective, because there's a couple different takes on this, and this ties into like leadership management and things of that sort. What would your opinion be on motivating employees? Would it be that of reward or that of discipline. So basically utilizing fear to motivate or utilizing like upside and reward and
Upside and reward. Who wants to walk into a job every day where they live in fear? I've done that.
Yeah.
It doesn't make me perform better.
Do you think because you kind of like tense up and you're like,
You
I
tense
can't, I
up and-
can't,
yeah.
I can't, because I've seen different people with different management styles of both of these things. And for example, one of them, Hormozy in acquisition.com,
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot more of the, not necessarily reward, but like come beside you. And like, if you're not performing well today, instead of like jumping down your throat, they're sitting down and have a conversation of, hey, what's going on? Like, I noticed that you were a little off today. Is there something that's bothering you? Whatever. And obviously it's the tough but tender type thing. Like you can't just be a slouch and a rollover with no repercussions.
Uh-huh.
And you're going to have to make the tough decisions, fire when you need to,
Mm-hmm.
Things of that sort. But they take more of that approach, and they make some pretty convincing arguments of why that is a lot better for getting the most out of people going that direction. I was just curious about what your opinion
because
was.
I boil it down to a scenario of like, I always have this analogy of if a kid is in a classroom and he raises his hand and he gets made fun of by others or scolded by his teacher for the answer that he provides, he's never going to raise his hand again.
Right.
So but I think reward will get 10x, maybe
Yeah.
not right away,
Yeah.
but
no,
long term. And
long
I
term.
think it'll build loyalty too.
I think so. But I do think that there needs to be the balance between that and still a level of fear that they know that, hey, I can't just not show
Yeah.
up because
No, this ain't a playground.
for sure. And I think that that's where that really gets into that tough but tender.
The tough but tender. Yeah.
So kind of transitioning and getting towards the end of this pod, we're at the beginning stages of our leadership journeys.
Yeah.
Right. And what we've learned and what we've just kind of gone on for is what we've observed in leaders and good characteristics and bad characteristics of what we've seen in leadership. Now that we're embarking on our journey and getting started, just talking about a little bit about what we're doing and then how, things that we want to ensure that we're implementing in terms of leadership. So one area is you just hired an agent, big guy.
Yeah.
You're the Maxwell Group is becoming the Maxwell Group. You're building a team. So asking you when, you have your agent starting, congrats, Zach. What are things that you want to do? What are characteristics that you want to make sure that you are being intentional about implementing practically when you're starting that?
Yeah. And I think one characteristic that I want to have is the continuous self-improvement. That's something that we didn't touch on, but I think is super important because sharpening my skill sets so that I'm on top of my game for the next in line, hence Zach. And back to the tough and tender thing. I think it's, and then learning. One thing that I'm going to have to do is learn his learning style, which I think is validation. When he gets validation, I think he will perform.
Yeah.
But also, so I think it's the learning how he learns and then pouring into that, because the return it'll get for him, but also me.
Yep.
Will
Totally.
be great.
Yeah.
So you too. I mean, you're looking to hire.
Yeah. And we also have a graphic designer on the team, right? That I'm trying to, manage relationships with him and how we interact and displaying those characteristics. I mean, he does a fantastic job. So it makes my life pretty easy. You know what I mean? I'm not having to have a lot of hard conversations, but I'm sure as we begin to expand and get into different branches of the agency and start to hire, that's going to be something that is going to be on the forefront of, one thing that I really want to do is be able to have the characteristic of seeking out good talent. You know, just like Michelle saw it in you and brought that out of you. That's one big thing
You
that
want to find the winner from the start,
I want to find good talent,
which is a talent in and of itself.
it sure
as a
is.
leader.
That's what 100%.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do that, and I want to work to the point to where I am able to do that. That would be a desire of
Which
mine.
I think hiring the winner right away, in order to do that, you have to see people in those environments that is
Mhm.
comparative to
Totally.
the work scenario.
Absolutely. And here's something on that note is A players only want to work for A players.
Yeah.
So on your point of self-improvement, I need to be worthy as a leader, as a business owner,
Mm-hmm.
to have top level talent
Mm-hmm.
want to come work for the agency. That's going to just be a huge thing of like, I can't just talk the talk. I got to walk the walk.
Yeah. And then back to our other point of like, if they see you self-improving, sharpening skills, that builds respect from them and ultimately motivates them.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a domino effect.
So that's what you got going on with the Maxwell Group. That's what we got going on with the Z&T agency. But collectively together, we are, we continuously talk about your network is your net worth. Your network is so important and being intentional about that. That's one thing that we're jumping off into as well of DNA, Dayton Networking Association.
Yeah, building our own networking group.
And building our own networking group. And those are some stallions in there.
Big time leaders.
Big time entrepreneurs, business leaders. Yeah,
dreamers, all the above.
Absolutely. And, I think that group is certainly not going to be just Zach and Spencer and them. It's going to be a collective group of people, but we are the ones that put it together.
Yeah.
So we have a level of,
hey, we need to provide some value.
We need to provide value to these folks. We really do. We're asking you to come join and iron sharpens
which
iron.
in and of itself is going to make us better. So like
it is.
We have put ourselves in a scenario to where we are forced to make ourselves better. That's like coaching with I'm a firm believer in like when I lead, I learn way more than if I follow.
You do. Absolutely. And just being put into that position in understanding, I guess the responsibility that is. And once again, this isn't going to be us and them. It's going to be us together. It's not going to be a dictatorship. It's going to be all one group working together for a common goal to get better and be the best version that we can be. But there is a level of responsibility on our shoulders to make sure that we're leading the meetings well. And, as you said, ensuring that they are getting value provided to them. And there's just going to be characteristics that we're going to have to learn, and we will build through doing, so that's another important thing in understanding the responsibility that is.
Yeah. And just to cap all this off, becoming a leader is not an overnight thing. It is the fastest way to learn how to be a leader is slowly.
Yeah.
Becoming a leader slowly is the fastest way to become the best leader. It is done through trial and error, a lot of trial, a lot of error. And it is done through emotional maturity, being able to take that feeling, turning it into knowing, stepping back, getting on the observation deck and observing scenarios from a 30,000 foot view rather than just being in it.
And having the humility to learn from those who have been there, done that before you, and having the humility as a leader when you are in that position to, be in the trenches with the guys and girls that you're working with and, being open to hearing their feedback and value them. I think that those are all very important characteristics of a good leader.
Yeah. And that's fantastic. And so, as always, we have a little bit of God's word for you to sum all this up. And today, what Zach and I chose was Matthew 20, verse 26. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. So in
That's
order to
really
lead,
good.
you have to serve.
Yeah.
The best leaders are the best servants.
That's really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So that's all we have today's pod. If you found some value, shameless plugs here. If you'd be willing to leave us a review, that would be much appreciated because that just allows the platform to grow, expand, and reach new people. So if you'd be willing to do that, much appreciated. Also, feel free to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week on the Blueprint Podcast.
Peace.
Peace.